I'm Connor,
I'm Nate.
and we're coming at you again for episode 3. We're mixing it up this time, doing a little movie debate. Pretty fitting that we started off with our ranked Quentin Tarantino movies, seeing as though I would pretty comfortably say he's both of our favorite directors,
Very
or
comfortably
director,
say
whatever grammatical
that.
way to say that. But yeah, he's the man, plain and simple. He's done, what is it? I guess 9 movies, because any cinephile, any movie geek knows Kill Bill is 1 movie, not 2.
Right.
So he's done 9 movies. Supposedly retire after his next movie, which I guess would be a potentially interesting conversation since there's a lot of
Yes.
rumors that he does a Star Trek movie, which I think we've discussed a little bit before. That I think I would be fairly largely disappointed if he chose to go out on a Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
Not that I don't want to see Tarantino direct a Star Trek movie. I just don't want that to be the
His
last
last
we get
movie.
of him.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. As a Trekkie, I would love that. But I could, if you're not super into Star Trek, I would be disappointed. Like, I could see why you would be disappointed if you're not a Trekkie. But for me, it's like, oh, cool. But
yeah,
if you weren't, I would also be like, if his last movie was like, I'm trying to think of some series that I'm not into, like, say, like, okay, like, I haven't seen like I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan. I haven't seen every movie through. I don't really know anything about Lord of the Rings. If some reason, like, there was another Lord of the Rings movie coming out and that was his last movie, I would be disappointed. Like, that would be like,
I don't dislike Star Trek, and I see how a Tarantino direction of Star Trek would probably be better than a Tarantino direction of Star Wars. One, because
yeah, it would also probably be like one of the
garbage.
best Star Trek movies ever made, like, guaranteed. Like, not that
Oh,
Star
for
Trek movies are
sure.
bad, but it's just like none of them are. There's no Star Trek movie that's like a 10 out of 10. You know,
Just
definitely not.
on an absolutely ridiculous facial expression.
Definitely. Well,
Uh,
it's gonna happen, I guess.
yeah, but
In these podcasts, but yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some good Star Trek, but like, there's like, it would probably be the best Star. I would be almost expecting it to be the best Star Trek movie ever made if he made a Star Trek movie, which
yeah,
is kind of a lot to ask, but I would.
it's
kind
also
of expect
not
it.
considering the man behind the camera, but um, I think that I'm not a Trekkie, but I'm also definitely not a Trekkie. Like, I don't know. I like the Star Trek movies. I think the original Star Wars movies are better than the original Star Trek movies. However, I think the new Star Trek movies are quite a bit better than the new Star Wars movies.
Yep.
But if Tarantino was going to go to like a series or just any sort of like sequel or within a franchise, even if it's a standalone Star Trek movie, I'd much rather see him return to his own universes and do like a Django sequel or a Kill Bill Volume 3 or something
Yep.
like that, as opposed to
Yep.
going to the Star Trek realm for his last film. But anyways, we can get it started. So
Yep.
my number 9 is Death Proof. I didn't write down the year. Maybe I should have done that for this, but there's only 9 movies and it's all by the same guy. You get the point.
Yep.
I don't think you've seen this one, right?
Yeah. So this is the only Tarantino movie I haven't seen. I'm just gonna exclude it from my list.
Yeah, that's fair. So I'll just speak slightly briefly
Death
about
Proof.
it. Just I guess a small note is that even Death Proof, I really enjoy it. I know some people don't quite as much. I know some people aren't as big fan of Death Proof, but I think it's just I feel like every Tarantino movie you have to take it with how he intended it. Tarantino clearly did not intend Death Proof to be some overwhelming masterpiece of cinema. He was just having fun with the grindhouse cinema, with the kind of B-movie vibe, just kind of like dirty, seedy kind of movies that you'd see in like 70s theaters or something like that.
Mm.
Really, really great car chase slash like action scene, I guess, at the end. I think Kurt Russell absolutely kills it as stuntman Mike. Kurt Russell kills it in everything he does in Tarantino movies. Yeah,
That he does.
just a pretty solid movie. It's not anything that I think you're gonna be dying to rewatch compared to everything that follows, pretty much. So I think it's kind of like a clear cut last place, but it's also meant to be part of Grindhouse, which the other half of that is Planet Terror by Robert Rodriguez. So you kind of got to take it with a grain of salt, I guess. I think it's still an enjoyable watch, very Tarantino style movie, but overall just doesn't stack up to the rest, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still excited to see it. I mean, any anything that Tarantino's involved with, I'll be excited to watch. So even though I know it's definitely not one of his most critically acclaimed movies, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it, and I plan to see it.
Yeah.
All right, so my number 8 then is you're not gonna like my list. So, but it's Reservoir Dogs. Oh God.
I don't have it that high either, but I think
Yeah.
and that's just number 8. We're in for a long podcast today, folks.
Yeah.
We're in for a long one.
I love again, all these movies are like a 9 out of 10 at least. So I love every one of these movies with all my heart. So it being in last place is not a knock against it. It's just not one of my favorites of his. I find, I guess, lacking in this movie. Dude, I don't know. I honestly, like, there's not a lot of tangible things that I can be like, yeah, this is why this movie is not as good for me as the other Tarantino movies.
Hold up.
I just
Hold
didn't
up.
have the same, like.
You froze a lot, so back up to when you said like you don't know why there's not a lot of tangible things, and like after that.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of tangible reasons why this movie is so far down on my list. I just kind of at the end didn't have the same awe-striking feeling that the other Tarantino movies had for me. It was awesome. I mean, the acting was great, the plot was great, the action was great. I think maybe like something that maybe it didn't have as much. What do you think about the soundtrack, the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack?
Really,
In
are
comparison,
you not a fan of the
in
soundtrack?
comparison to other Tarantino, it just didn't stick out for me as much as some
Um,
other Tarantino movie soundtracks did. I think that
I
might have been
don't
a big part of it.
I don't know how much of a hot take this is, and I obviously don't have every soundtrack or song that he's included in front of me, but to me, one of the more iconic Tarantino moments, and maybe possibly the most iconic, is the start of that movie when the credits start and Little Green Bag by I forget who now comes on with the bass and the drums, and they're all walking to the bank robbery in their suits. Like that is just, I liked it too
Yeah.
because it was yeah, dude, the soundtrack was it wasn't maybe musically
Well,
so
Tarantino has never had a bad
no,
soundtrack.
certainly
So
not, but I
it's
think
it's always some of the best parts of his movies, which is why I just feel like this one, although I'm sure it was, yeah, it's also worth noting. I've seen Reservoir Dogs significantly less times than every other Tarantino movie, and it could, again, if I saw this movie like two more times, could easily climb the ranks. Um,
he
so
took the
maybe that's
Reservoir
why it
Dogs
doesn't.
soundtrack. Basically, what he did, in my mind, is at least he took the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack and the idea because he was listening to like something sound of the '70s, I forget, and it was the same radio station for the whole movie. And then he just dunked on that with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that like the radio theme and the soundtrack and stuff like that. But look, Little Green Bag in the beginning of Reservoir Dogs, and then Stuck in the Middle with You, obviously, when Mr. Blonde is cutting off the cop's ear, are like two of the most iconic musical moments that Tarantino's ever had. Like, if you've seen
Yeah,
Reservoir Dogs, there's no chance you listen to Stuck in the Middle with You without thinking of that
the same again.
scene
Yeah,
in that movie.
yeah, disturbing. I don't know. To me, I actually remember. I remember thinking, being super engaged and into like the beginning of the movie, and the same with the end. Like I felt like the beginning and the end of the movie were so good, and I felt like the middle things, there were just kind of a lot of things kind of got lost in the middle a little bit for me, in comparison to his other movies, and it didn't just like have me as sucked into the world of his movie throughout the whole movie consistently from beginning, middle to end, as his other movies have done for me, I guess. And I think maybe in the middle I was like, all right, let's move along here. I don't know. Not more so that just more so those other movies.
Yeah, I
Still
mean
a great.
it is his first feature length film, so there's definitely like it's not his best. It's not at the top of my list. It's not in my top 3 or anything, but I think it's
Yeah.
still clearly a way better movie than a lot of people will ever make, and
Yeah,
has a lot of
definitely.
qualities that he grew on and expanded on and improved on throughout the rest of his career. Um, all right, my number 8 is Jackie Brown. I enjoy Jackie Brown. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's one of Tarantino's. What would almost be harder for me is to rank Tarantino's movies based on dialogue and writing in them. Because Jackie Brown would be close to the top of that list. I think it's got a great script, great uh, character development in it, which is exactly what Tarantino intended to do. Um, and I'm fine with slower movies and more character focused movies, but that one just doesn't do it for me quite as much as it might for other people, and certainly not as much as anything above Jackie Brown does for me. Like I think it's a pretty clear cutoff tier to me. Jackie Brown and Death Proof are in like the bottom Tarantino tier, in my opinion. I think
Hmm.
that's fairly clear, at least to me. Because I think cinematically he improved a lot. Um, Plot wise, was just more engaged with his other stories and his other characters. Although Samuel L. Jackson's character in Jackie Brown was fantastically written and fantastically acted. Um, I don't
Indeed.
know.
Ordell.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Mr.
also just
Ordell.
never really bought into Robert Forster's and Pamela Greer's like romance plot of that movie. I just never really bought into it, I guess. I don't know. And then Robert De Niro was just kind of like there. I don't know. There was
He's a funny character, dude.
yeah, I don't know. There was almost too much and not enough going on in that movie for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
But that's just my thoughts on Jackie Brown. Still a great movie. Again, even if I do sound like I'm dumping on it a little bit, everything from 9 to 1 is like from a B plus to an A plus movie.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yeah. I'll give more of my thoughts on Jackie Brown when it comes up in my list. My number 7 movie is The Hateful Eight. Love this movie.
we can just get this out of the way. That's
Long ass
also
movie.
my number 7.
Uh, yeah, I have a feeling it's gonna be your number 7. I feel like we would agree on this one at least. I think it's almost like too much of a Tarantino movie, if that makes sense. Like it's almost like
But I
it was
love
almost
it, dude. I
yeah.
think
It's
this
like
movie is so ridiculously underrated. Like
yeah, yeah,
ridiculous. This has to be, in my opinion, the most underrated Tarantino movie. I love it. I've seen this one more times than I've seen Jackie Brown and Reservoir Dogs, maybe, and those are like way shorter movies.
yeah,
But I love the Hateful Eight. But continue.
yeah. I love the dialogue, man. The
Oh,
dialogue in
it's
The
so
Hateful Eight. I
engaging.
mean,
If you're a Tarantino fan,
yeah,
you probably agree it's one of his more underrated, if not his most underrated movie.
yeah. And I mean, it's a gripping plot, even though it's like slow moving. The scenery, the beauty of the movie, the cinematography is incredible. Um, it's a real. I love watching this movie like on a snowy day, on a winter day. Like, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, it puts you in that place, dude.
Yep.
It's the aesthetic of the movie is brilliant. The characters are brilliant. I mean, it's you really get hooked on the characters. I feel like you become very
Yeah.
invested in them. Um, even though they're all kind of shitty. Like they're all kind of crooks in one way or another, or slimy, or just like they all have darkness. Like
Even Chris Mannix, Walton Goggins' character, who was like the sheriff of Red Rock, was like a raging racist, basically.
and he ends up being like the hero. Yeah, like,
Yeah, and he and
yeah,
Samuel L.
like
Jackson end up like being on the same side basically and killing everybody in the room. Oh,
Yeah.
spoiler alert, I guess.
I
Sorry.
love that collaboration, the shakes. Yeah, I love the way that shook out. Like they were just like mortal enemies and basically shared zero values, but somehow just teamed up and was like, well, I guess we got to work together. And they kind of had fun doing it. They were like, they were laughing and shit. It's fucking hilarious. I mean, oh, yeah, great movie, man. It is. It's. I don't know. One of his best for sure. I mean,
Yeah, like
they're all one of
just
his best.
I'm just gonna go with
But
8 characters because it's called the Hateful Eight, but so many directors and so many writers would be lucky to have one character as well written as Tarantino has like 8 to 10 in this movie.
yeah,
So
yeah. I think the only reason why this is not, in my opinion, one of his best is because it didn't really. I think it didn't push the envelope that much for him. For him, at least, like it was very much within his wheelhouse. He didn't do anything that innovative for him, I feel like, or that new. Um, and so it was kind of like he just kind of did everything that he does really well, just kind of like did it very solidly, but didn't like surprise me, I guess, in a lot of ways. Like it was a very Tarantino movie, you know. um
yeah,
I think
uh,
that's the only.
I kind of
That's really.
agree
I
with
don't
you.
have a
I
knock
kind of
against it other
agree. I
than that.
think I think the movie, my only knock against the movie is that um it loses steam a little bit, I think, at the end. Um I think like the last 30 minutes or so are a little drawn out.
You don't you also have a little bit of a gripe with like there's like a plot point that didn't really add up. You said that something about Mexicans not being allowed in Minnie's haberdashery and there being some kind of inconsistency.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. I did have something about that. I did. I wonder if I can look back in our text
Yeah.
because I feel like I texted you about that. But continue. Um. Wait, hold on. I might have found it.
How did you already
Oh,
find it? It's like
oh.
ages ago.
Remember, she lets Bob in. So here's the
Yeah.
inconsistency that no dogs and no Mexicans are allowed in Minnie's haberdashery, but
Yeah.
in the flashback, she lets Bob in like no questions asked.
Yep.
So that was the
Yep.
inconsistency I had with it. Although that is a great line when Samuel L. Jackson is like, "You know how I know you're full of shit, Bob? Because Minnie used to have a sign here that said no Mexicans and no dogs, and the only reason she got rid of it, she started allowing dogs." That is such a
She started allowing. Oh my god.
that is such a
Tarantino
great
fucking.
line. Just and Samuel L. Jackson's delivery, just his line delivery of Tarantino's writing is just maybe my favorite in the movie business,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yep.
Let's move on to number 6. My number 6 is Reservoir Dogs. Um, uh, I don't know. It's so close to the Hateful Eight for me. Like we just got done kind of gushing about the Hateful Eight, so now I'm like rethinking it a little bit. Um, but Reservoir Dogs, I really like it. I like the characters. I think it's really original with the colors, with the suits, the
Yep.
back and forth between the criminals and the bank robbers is just like he opens on this absolutely hilarious, borderline probably 10-minute dialogue about a Madonna
Yeah.
song that is just absolutely hysterical. Meanwhile, Joe's over there like talking about like Tony Wong or Tony Chung in his phone book that he found. Like, just the way he
Yeah.
interconnects his dialogue throughout that movie really gets to me, and also the like the bathroom cop story that Mr. Orange has to memorize, and um, just the only thing I think that keeps this movie down to me is that the cinematography is certainly not what Tarantino eventually grew into. Several movies have much better like cinematography and just camera techniques and stuff like that throughout the movies. Um,
I think
and
that's
also,
actually another reason why I was down on my list. Yeah, just the
yeah,
cinematography wasn't like didn't
it's
blow
not
me away like
Once
other
Upon a
Tarantino
Time. It's
movies.
not Django. It's not any of that. But and also, I feel like Mr. Blonde's psychotic break or whatever you want to call it just comes out of left field a little bit. There's like little to no indication that I mean, I guess you could say the indication is that all the characters are like, oh, Mr. Blonde started plugging everybody in the jewelry store. Sure, but that's all hearsay, and there's clearly some unreliable narrator stuff going on within this movie.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like him going torture on the cop and cutting his ear off was a little out of left field and kind of over the top, even for Tarantino. But I think even though Tarantino is so over the top, he kind of refined that part of his filmmaking as he went on. So I think that's what keeps it down a little bit for me.
Yeah, I think it was almost an important, like, it was an important stepping stone for Tarantino almost to write that into the movie and then further develop that aspect of his movies into, like you said, something more refined. Like, because I think part of the reason that makes Tarantino such a, an awe-striking like director is these moments, these crazy scenes that come out of left field that you never see coming, and that shock the fuck out of you, sometimes queasy or sick to your stomach, but also it keeps you gripped into the movie, and it's like and it's the kind of thing that, like, when you're still thinking about a movie when you wake up the next day, like that's how you know it was a great movie. And
Yep.
that's, these kinds of scenes are like what kind of do that for you with Tarantino a lot of the time, and it just really makes you think about the movie and like what this scene means, and like, oh my god, like how did this happen, why did this happen, and like that was just crazy. And it's like it really provides a new level of depth for every movie when he does these shocking things. And I think that one was probably, like, it was the start of those scenes for him, and he got better at them as he went
Yeah,
on. It was like these
he has some
crazy
much
shocking
better
scenes.
just shock value kind of scenes
Yeah.
or just crazy plot twist through violence. I think he's much better at that later on. I mean, I'm looking at my list just with everything above Reservoir Dogs. He does he does that so much better in every one of them.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
but all right, you're number 6.
So my number 6, you're gonna crucify me. Is Inglourious Basterds.
Holy hell! Holy shit! Number 6. Number 6. Oh,
Yeah.
Jackie Brown is above Inglourious Basterds. I'm just like looking at my list, doing the math here. Oh my
Yeah,
god!
man. Yeah, man.
Oh wow! All right, continue.
So yeah, the only, again, I think the reason why, I'll just get it out of the way, like the reason why this movie isn't high, because I think this movie, like, almost every element of this movie could easily make it his best movie or one of his best movies, except for the fact that I just it just felt a little bit too slow, and just a bit, and
Oh,
that's like what I think
Ray,
held it
come
back.
on! You can't. I.
It was just a
You
little slow,
can't
man.
call that movie slow and then put Once Upon a Time in Hollywood above it. Like I get what
I
I enjoy Once Upon a Time in
I
Hollywood
don't
so
know.
so much, but that movie is by far his slowest. Either that or The Hateful Eight are by far his slowest movies.
I don't know why. I mean, from a adding up the plot points standpoint, like on paper, you're probably right, but I didn't feel that way when watching the movie. I was more gripped to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood than I was to Inglourious Basterds. Inglourious Basterds, I mean, it's just a movie. I think it's one of the only Tarantino movies that I feel like if I'm gonna watch it, I gotta really like, uh, it's just not one of those movies that I'll throw on at any time of day, like whenever. That doesn't make it a bad movie necessarily, but I feel like Tarantino's movies, like, I will just always watch no matter how many times I've seen it, and I'll always watch it whenever, like with whoever, and I'll just, if it's available, I'll just throw it on. Inglourious Basterds is like something that if I'm gonna watch that, I have to have like a more stronger intent, and I have to block out like I feel like a more focused period, long potentially longer period of time. Like it seems it's not a movie. I don't know. It's like I feel like it takes more work for me to watch that movie for whatever reason. Than
Oh, I can't get there. Look,
I don't
that's
know.
so
I don't
tough for me
know.
because I feel like I'm bad mouthing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when I compare it and like the reasons I'm giving, but I just don't see. I get how you can be more gripped by Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think it's a bit more like it's a more attractive looking movie, literally. Like there's more attractive
Well, yeah,
aspects to once it's drawing you into that's the whole point of kind of like the set pieces that Tarantino built and recreated is drawing you into glamorous Hollywood,
yeah,
whereas you're in World War II, Nazi
right.
Germany, and Inglourious Basterds. So I mean, I get that. I just think, oh, I think this is somewhat popular opinion, but Hans Landa might be like the best writing he's ever done. That is just an absolutely diabolical character.
Yeah.
And
Um,
Aldo Rain, like his just
the
southern
characters,
twang,
the
or
plot. Yeah,
his
the
his
character.
his
Yeah,
give and take and his contrast with Hans Landa, like they could not be more different. And it is just so like their scenes together are the best in the movie. And I don't
yeah.
know. I just
I don't have
well,
many knocks. I don't. The only knock I have is that for whatever reason, it felt a bit slower than an average Tarantino movie for me, in the sense that I just wasn't. It's kind of like how we said, like, with a Tool song, right? Like a Tool song can be fucking 15 minutes long, and you're gripped to it for every second of that song, and it doesn't feel like 15 minutes went by. You weren't at all bored. You weren't like, okay, like let's this, and that's how Tarantino movies usually are for me. And this one to some extent is too, but it's just not quite as much as the other ones. It does feel a little longer. Like it wasn't like at the end of it, I'm like, wow, that was 3 hours. I can't believe that. How long is it? Is it
mhm.
3 hours? Two and a half?
It's
Is it
like 2:45, 2:30, something
2:45?
like that.
Yeah.
But which is like standard Tarantino length, I would say.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but yeah, all right. Let's move on, I guess. We can talk a little bit more about that later. Um, my number five. Wait, I'm on number
Six.
five, right?
I
No, I
think
talked
it's
about Reservoir Dogs, didn't I? Yeah, I talked about Reservoir
wait.
Dogs and how Mr. Blonde is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So you're
our
number
number
five.
seven was both Hateful Eight. My number six was Reservoir Dogs. Your number six was Inglourious Bastards.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so my number five is Kill Bill. Uh, the reason for that being, I think it's a fairly solid kind of middle of the road Tarantino movie, potentially his most out there movie. In fact, probably definitely his most out there movie. The only knock I have is like I do consider it one movie. I feel like unless it's on TV, I will always watch it back to back, unless like just number one or number two was on TV and then they move to the next thing. But
Yep.
if I'm putting it on, I usually watch it back to back. Um, and I feel like we both had this opinion that Volume One is better than Volume Two. I've recently changed my opinion on that. I think Volume Two is better than Volume One, and the reason being, I think Volume One's pacing is a little off. I think it takes I don't know how to put it. I feel like I'm more invested in the story once I get to Volume Two, and I feel like the pacing is a little bit more what I'm looking for from Tarantino. Um, but overall, I think it's a great movie. I mean, classic revenge tale essentially. Um, Great use of color in those movies. The black and white, the anime. I mean, it's all great, and the violence in that is off the charts. I mean, that's where he really, if you look at his movies chronologically, that is really where he just like took the chains off and
Yep.
just let loose with the blood and guts. Most notably, probably in the Crazy '88 scene. Um, but everybody great acting in that. Keith Carradine was awesome as Bill. Michael Madsen
Yep.
awesome as Bud. Pai Mei, absolutely ridiculous character, but totally Tarantino, totally
The
paying
cruel tutledge of
homage.
Pai Mei.
Yeah, paying homage to the old samurai movies. Daryl Hannah was diabolical as L. Um, I mean, as we talk about these back to back, it's just more clear how he is so far beyond any other director or writer in being able to craft an absolute uh, just huge amount of characters with huge backstories and great depth to them, even if they were only on the screen for like 5 minutes. Um,
Yeah.
and I think Kill Bill does a great job of that, and it also brings the emotional payoff. I mean, in at the end when her daughter's still alive, and kind of brings a little softer side into the movie, and really that scene between Beatrix and Bill at the end, I think might be the best in both movies. Because you're
Hmm.
waiting the whole time basically to get to Bill.
Yeah.
So I really,
And
really
they just nailed it. Like,
the acting in
how can
that
you?
final 45-ish minutes or whatever it is of
Yeah.
1 and 2 is fantastic.
Yeah. Like, how can, like, the anticipation, especially like it's two full length movies. I mean, you're basically waiting 4 hours to get to like this ridiculously climactic point. She goes through so many people to get to this guy. It's like, how can you live up to the hype
Yeah, but then
of this
Tarantino takes
Bill
his foot off the
interaction?
gas a little bit once she gets there, and like
Yeah.
we could easily have gotten some no holds barred, absolutely psychotic like duel, but he takes his foot off the gas a little bit, gives us some emotional payoff, and Bill's death is like takes what 5-10 seconds or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I thought it was great acting, great
I thought it was
writing.
genius. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Genius.
that was great. But I think this is again where I would end a tier. I'd say Kill Bill, Reservoir Dogs, Hateful Eight for me are kind of in the same tier. Um, and Kill Bill I think is probably at the top of that tier.
Yep. Yep. All right. So my number 5 is Jackie Brown. Right
I
above.
cannot fucking believe this is not that's despicable having that directly above Inglourious Basterds. If you're gonna commit to Jackie Brown above Inglourious Basterds, it needs to be like at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoy Jack. To me, Jackie Brown is Tarantino's most underrated movie. Just in the sense that like I don't hear enough people talk about it. I feel like, and I personally loved it and felt like it was just like one of his greats. Basically, I don't see how
I think a
why
lot of
I
people would
don't
agree with that. It being his
I
most
don't.
underrated.
Okay, I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. Yeah, I feel like it should be in the conversation with just his all time great movies. I mean, yeah, like you said before, the character development is off the charts, and really like my favorite element of the movie. It has one of my favorite soundtracks from Tarantino ever. I can listen to that soundtrack front to back all the way through
Yeah, that's
any day.
music soundtrack is pretty great.
Yeah, any day, and it matches the aesthetic and the cinematography of the movie perfectly. Like I am just
Yeah, it does.
so into that world
I might
when
give this a
I'm.
watch tonight when we're done.
Yeah,
Might
yeah, dude.
might reconsider it a little bit, but I don't think it's gonna move any. I might like it more, but I don't think it's gonna overtake anything at the same time.
Yeah, it's just it. I feel like attached to that world almost to the world of Jackie Brown, and it really just feels like I'm just like, yeah, I'm just kind of, it feels like I'm bumming around, like, where are they're not in what what city are they in?
I don't know. It looks like LA or Miami or something like that. It looks
Yeah,
like
well,
kind of
I know it's
oceanside,
a
sunny.
southern.
Yeah,
It's I want to say Miami, but
I don't
and
know,
they're
but
yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's like they they're just kind of like they're just trying to like they're just hustlers. They're like they're like they're hustling, just kind of like scraping by. Just trying to enjoy the little things in life. He's fucking Ordell's got his little surfer girl over here. He's got a little girl over
yeah.
here. It's like fuck. Uh, you know, I don't know.
Oh, it's Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Yeah, that makes more sense. Uh, and yeah, dude, it's I love the sound. I just love like the whole aesthetic of that movie, and I'm really into the plot too. I love how at the end they just go through the end of the same ending from all these different perspectives and angles, and
Yeah.
I think it's just a
You know,
classic
I don't know.
Tarantino
I don't know if
move.
you know this. You know, it's not an original screenplay. It's adapted from a book. That is the only
You
unoriginal
know,
Tarantino screenplay.
I think I actually did hear that, but I forgot about it.
Yeah, I was just on the
Yeah.
Wikipedia page to try to see where it was set, and that I did know that. It just jogged my memory. Not taking away from his
Yeah.
writing on any characters like Ordell, like I was talking about, but
Yeah.
um, I think that's also like a reason that it's that low for me because I did know that when I made the list, and I just didn't think about it when we were talking about it.
Yeah.
So that is also a reason why it's a little bit lower for me, is because I think Tarantino's originality kind of adds a little bit for me.
Yeah. This is also just a really humorous Tarantino movie too.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
mean, they're all
just
pretty funny in their own way.
they are, yeah, they definitely, Tarantino obviously has comedy in all of his movies, but
Which is funny because
yeah.
I don't find him in anything he talks about in person, I don't find him funny really at all. Even when he makes
Mm.
a joke, I don't find him very funny. But in his writing,
Yeah.
it's great. His voice
Well,
is great on
nor
paper.
are his movies even really comedies. Like, I think the only movie of his that's actually listed as a comedy is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like,
Yeah.
it was nominated for in the comedy
In the Golden
genre.
Globe, it won
It was under
best
comedy.
comedy, yeah, or best
Yeah,
comedy
so
or whatever.
I'm pretty sure if you look up any one of his other movies and you look up like genre, like it's comedy is not going to be the first one that comes up, even though they all are comedic in some element. But Jackie Brown, I think, is actually, you could say that's a comedy. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's pretty
funny.
close.
Yeah.
All right, my number 4 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Um, I don't know. I struggle because I really, really enjoy that movie. I can't believe actually once you think about it, I think it's insane that DiCaprio and Brad Pitt haven't done a movie together until this. And
Yeah, that is
when you
insane.
consider their kind of like similar career trajectories and kind of similar like film choices as well, and the kind of movies they like to do and the kind of roles they seek out, pretty surprising that they haven't gotten together yet. But how fitting can it be that their first time together is in a Tarantino movie? And it's also kind of interesting to me because DiCaprio is definitely still a leading man, but he's kind of on the twilight end of that. You know, he's not. DiCaprio isn't going to be an action star in anything anymore. You know,
Yep.
so their kind of career trajectories are kind of at the point where their characters were in the film. I mean, obviously Brad Pitt is better than a stunt double, but you know what I mean. They're kind of at
Yeah.
the where do I go now kind of stage. Um, so I like that aspect. The music was amazing, and the last 30 minutes could be Tarantino's best work yet. I mean, I borderline pissed myself in the movie theater. In the
Yep.
last 30 minutes, just a fantastic payoff. Probably the best payoff
Yeah.
he's written. But and the intensity he builds up on Spawn's movie ranch when Brad Pitt's going to visit George is, oh my God, what the writing, the soundtrack, all
Mm.
of it is just, that was insane. I was on the edge of my seat in the theater, and I still am on like the sixth watch, like on the edge of my
Yep.
seat when Brad Pitt rolls into Spawn Ranch. And especially, I think we talked about this a bit when it first came out. If you do know the history behind the movie and you know what happens as far as the Manson family goes, I think the payoff's a little bit better, especially because I think in the first 20 or 30 minutes, Tarantino pans up and he shows the Cielo Drive street sign. And those who in the audience know that is related to the Manson family, that's where, what's her name? Sharon Tate and her friends were murdered by the Manson family. Like, you know what's coming. Like,
Yep.
Tarantino's foreshadowing in that movie is the best that he has ever done. I think that is him basically flexing his creative muscles at the most he's done in his career, pretty much.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
However, I enjoy 3 movies more. So that's
So yeah, my number 4 is also Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Maybe our lists aren't as different as we thought. I mean, we get
there's one
some weird.
glaring difference.
Yeah,
Like,
there's a glaring difference,
absolutely
but
glaring
we
difference.
have some very similar spots. This movie, yeah, I saw this movie in theaters 3 times.
You got me.
Um,
I saw it twice, but I saw it Friday
yeah.
night, went back the next night. The very next night,
Yeah.
went back.
Mine were a little more spread out, yeah, but I have never sat in a movie theater and been so happy watching a movie before in my whole life.
Yeah.
This movie, I just had an enormous grin on my face the entire time. I was so into this movie. Honestly, I thought this would end up higher on my list. Uh, and I don't even really have a good reason for the fact that it's 4 and not higher, except for literally what you just said. Like, there's just 3 movies I enjoyed more.
Mhm.
Uh, but
Like, this is
man,
where
yeah,
I think it really starts to get I could throw these movies and jumble my top 4 around, like, by the hour, basically.
yeah,
Um,
definitely by the hour. And I think this is like the happiest Tarantino movie. It's
it
like
has a
there's
happy
not a
ending.
lot of darkness in this
Yeah.
movie, except for a little bit of yeah, ominousness at Spawn Movie Ranch and the ending, obviously. But even then, the ending ends great, like happily. So keep hitting my head on my fucking headboard here. uh, but
I think it's half like a lot of Tarantino movies actually do kind of have what you could call happy endings. But I
yeah,
think the reason this one kind of sticks out a little bit is because he changed history to create a happy
right.
ending.
Yeah, everybody's anticipating some dark fucking shit at the end of the movie. Like, this movie is not gonna go well, and
Yeah, and the hippie
totally
motherfuckers get
throws
their
you for a
teeth
loop.
absolutely
Yeah,
kicked the fuck in. Like, though, I mean, that is. Has there ever been a beatdown like that in
yeah,
cinematic history? That's a
and
question that needs
yeah,
answering.
and that's the thing. It's like the whole movie.
Is mellow, basically,
There's
other than a
virtually zero.
few
Yeah,
scenes.
other than basically Brad Pitt, punching that hippie fuck blonde guy in the teeth a few times and making him fix his tire, which really wasn't even that bad. That movie was super mellow. There was virtually zero violence throughout the whole thing. You're like, what? Like, where's Tarantino, like,
Yeah, where
signature violence?
yeah.
And then at the end, the most violent Tarantino scene in history. Like, it's just
Yeah,
boom.
it's definitely not the most blood, but it is like it
It's
is
the most violent though. It's not the
I don't
most
I
blood, but
don't
that's not
know.
the only. That's
Well,
not
there
the
were
only
some
factor
scenes in
in
Django
violence.
Unchained that were really hard to watch, but there was like a different reason for that kind of.
Yeah,
But in Once Upon a Time
yeah.
in Hollywood, the actual acts that were happening were just like I was cringing, but like in laughter too, like as it was going on. Like when he takes that
That's what's so
that
sick.
redhead,
That's
when he
what's so
takes that
sick is that he
redhead to
can
the
make you laugh
mantle,
about it.
like to the granite
Well,
mantle, and
that's
it's just
the
like caving her forehead. And it's
that's where it
ridiculous.
becomes, in my opinion, that's the moment where it becomes the most violent scene in Tarantino history, is when he starts caving her head in on the fireplace mantle.
Yeah.
Uh, and then obviously when he fucking torches that goth lady,
Oh
goth girl
yeah,
in
that
the
was so funny.
when DiCaprio does that was so hilarious. That's the thing, is that like only a man like Tarantino can make such a horrifying, disturbingly violent scene so funny. I mean, it's just like,
It's his comedic timing. It's the
you
way
just
he
got to give it
yeah.
up. Like, oh my god, it's
I
just
don't
like,
think anybody else could pull that off, honestly.
no, no, they couldn't. No way. No one ever will. That was insane. How
Because
can you laugh at
the
that?
only way anybody could pull that
You
off
can't.
is if like the entire movie was like slapstick comedy prior to that, basically,
Right.
which Once
Right.
Upon a Time in Hollywood was not.
Yeah,
It was a fairly dramatic movie, I would say. Like there were some comedic moments, but I would call it like a fairly dramatic movie. And
dude. Yeah. I was so into the world of this movie. I
yeah,
mean, I just
that's a
wanted to
great
be
movie.
back in those decades and driving around. I mean, dude, I, and just listening to that music and wearing those clothes. I mean, it's just like you were just in the world. I mean, I told you, like, when I first time I saw the movie in, like, yeah, my first viewing of the movie in theaters was with my buddy Marco, and Marco, oh my god, just was so into the movie and so inspired by Cliff Booth's driving that we flew home. Like, we fucking, I thought I was scared for our lives. I mean, he just, it was like, yeah, dude, it
Yeah,
rubs off on you, man. It's like, oh my god, look at this fucking coolest dude ever, just going everywhere, listening to the fucking best tunes. I mean, it's just like
yeah,
those are the little things in life that are
yeah,
give you such pleasure. Also, yeah, like, yeah, most everybody that didn't get this movie right off the bat or didn't really like it that much. Usually those, like you said, those are like the people that aren't super familiar with the story, the Manson murders and
yeah.
everything that happened back then. What's crazy is that I didn't know shit about about the Manson murders or anything. I was completely ignorant to it all. I knew vaguely that like this movie had historical context, but that's all I knew really. I knew it had something to do with like Manson. I barely even knew like anything about Charles Manson. So I didn't know shit. I didn't get any of the references, none of the foreshadowing, and I still loved the movie the first time I saw it. Like, loved it, and thought it was like a 10 out of 10. So you can
Yeah.
imagine how much I loved it then. Once I
Once you knew it was
actually
coming,
looked
and
up, once I
yeah,
looked up the story and read about the Manson and actually became educated on it, and then watched again, like oh my god, it was
yeah.
honestly it's crazy that this movie isn't like higher up for me because of that.
All right. My number 3, Django Unchained.
Dude,
Is that
that's my
also
number
your
three
number
too.
3? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Bing, bing, bing.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is there to say about Django Unchained other than that it is probably, maybe I think it's maybe Tarantino's most entertaining movie. He kind of takes a what's the word? Like he takes the non-linear storytelling that he's pretty used to and frequently uses, kind of puts it in the backseat a little bit. And he gives a
Yeah,
fairly straightforward story. Um, Probably the most brutal and consistently violent Tarantino movie on the list, I would say, potentially. Um, but just a great story. I mean, how do you come up with this story and these characters? Like this ridiculous fucking dentist in the middle of the woods that's German, and
dude, that
it's
is why that movie is so high
ridiculous.
up for me. Is honestly, uh, Christoph Waltz is
Christoph
his name,
Waltz,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, dude, that guy made the movie for me, man. I mean, if without that character, there's no way this movie would be number three for me. No
Yeah,
way.
he's pretty great. And the I the only gripe I really have with Django Unchained is that I think the pacing is occasionally a little slow at times for the story. Like we don't get to meet Calvin Candy into basically 2/3 into the movie. And as you said, how Christoph Waltz makes the movie for you, Leonardo DiCaprio makes the movie for me. Mainly because I think Christoph Waltz is essentially playing Hans Landa, but an actually nice guy this time around. I think it's like kind of similar-ish characters and like mannerisms and stuff, um,
Yeah,
which is fine. But that's kind of why. And DiCaprio, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. If anyone out there knows, but I don't think DiCaprio's ever played a bad guy before this movie, and I think he absolutely nails it. And I would
oh
fucking
yeah.
love to see him play bad guys along those lines, like a powerful guy. Well, I guess you might be able to say he plays a bad guy in Wolf of Wall Street,
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, you could say that.
but he's like an
Made
anti-hero. You root for him though,
he's an
like
anti-hero, right?
yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I wouldn't
that's
call him. He's not a clear-cut bad guy like he is in Django Unchained.
yeah.
You can't compare Jordan
Django Unchained,
Belfort to
is
Calvin
just
Candy.
unhinged evil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
I think he absolutely nails it. And I've discussed this with you before, kind of like my gripe about the Bob the Mexican in Hateful Eight, but a little kind of potential plot hole I think is that you could go the route of explaining this that Calvin Candy is just really egotistical and prideful, but he could have made all the money and not like had anybody killed or anything like that. Like there was no reason, even if Django Unchained and I almost said Hans Landa. Dr. King. I said Django Unchained. I'm fucked up right now. So why like Django and what's his name? Dr. King Schultz could have just paid for Broomhilda. Like they didn't need. I don't think they needed this fucking elaborate story and an hour and a half of my time in that plot line to go rescue Broomhilda. Like I feel like they could have just bought her. While Calvin Candy
um.
is a cruel guy, he's also a businessman.
Yes.
They could have made him a ridiculous offer just for Broomhilda. They didn't need the whole. What is Dr. King Schultz saying that he's like, you don't ask to buy the horse, you ask to buy the farm. Like I don't think they needed that approach.
Yeah. That is a fair point. Realistically, if you were gonna make an argument for like realism in the story,
Which I think is fair. I feel like
it
it's
might
a fairly realistic movie. Like
yeah.
it's fantastical in a way that like these things would never happen in that time period and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know. I really enjoy the movie, and I think it's one of Tarantino's best stories. And again, the character development is insane. But I just think there's a little plot hole here and there that bothers me a little bit, and that's
You
what
know, and I think it's honestly fine because
it's
like
Tarantino
you
being over
said,
the top again. But
yeah, and it's also, I think, plot wise, it is kind of one of the most robust plots, I feel like, and most like really a lot of his movies, like you could say, like whether it be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Kill Bill, Reservoir Dogs, Inglourious, like they're like, kind of like you said, they're non-linear and they're disjointed in a way,
yeah, and they come
where
together at the end.
right, and where the plot trajectory and sensicalness like isn't that important, and it's not like, yeah, it's he's not like telling a tale necessarily. In this one he kind of is, and because of that, uh, it might be like harder to make to like you're the realisticness is going to be like more readily apparent for that, like
Yeah,
or the lack of realisticness is going to be like harder to conceal when you're like really when you're trying to tell an actually like step one, step two, step three, this is how it's supposed to go storyline. um Dude, you know what's also just so amazing about that movie is, like you said, it's like one of the most brutal and consistently brutal and dark Tarantino movies, but dude, it's still hilarious. Some
yeah, it
parts of it,
really
dude,
is. That
I
part
can't see
is
fucking shit out of this thing.
yeah. That the whole. I don't want to
What a
bring the
scene!
KKK into this podcast, but here we go. That scene is fucking hilarious.
That's the funniest, one of the funniest scenes all time. Tarantino is
Oh,
when,
Don Johnson,
yeah,
Jonah Hill, and the like. Oh, I'm going the fuck home. Like,
yeah, like,
don't ask
look,
me and mine for
no
nothing.
one's, no one's saying we don't appreciate what Jenny did,
Yeah,
or whatever her name is, like
but I think
fucking
this
making all
time we do no bags. Next time, full regalia.
full regalia.
Yeah, that part is just I think another
It's like,
reason I
he's
do
like,
love that
all that
scene, but
matters is the fucking horse can see.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Last second, they all put the bags on. They're like, fuck it.
But I think another point that this is something about this movie that always bothered me. It's such a minor point though. But the end, it's not. They don't just let Django like smile after he blows Candyland up and ride off with Broomhilda. There's like a little cut scene with him shooting a snowman, and then Dr. King Schultz is like, "Oh, they're gonna call you the fastest gun in the South." Like, is that necessary? Like, who edited this movie? I don't need this 10 seconds of like flashback nonsense at the very end of the movie. So
I don't remember that.
yeah,
Like,
it's
yeah,
always bothered me when I get to the end of that movie. I'm like, why am I watching these 10 seconds?
yeah. Maybe it was
um,
just a error and they forgot to edit it
yeah,
down.
and then so in a way, I think there are a few cut scenes in Django and a few things that I think have been done a little better and a little cleaned up. But other than that,
Hmm.
10 out of 10. Like I would still call it a 10 out of 10 movie. I've watched that movie probably like 20
For
fucking
sure.
times. So
For sure. Yep.
all right, you're number two, I guess. So we've been going back and forth, but since Django was our
All right.
yeah.
So my number two is Kill Bill.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I actually knew your ranking once you said Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was four. I
yeah.
kind of guessed, but
Yeah. Kill Bill,
sorry.
dude.
Credit where credit's due. Who showed you this movie?
Yeah. So yeah, this is what this is, yeah, 5 years ago, freshman year college. Yeah, you showed me this movie. You promised me that I would like it. We watched both volumes in one night. I think we were up
I
to like
remember telling you when I
4
was playing the
a.m.
first one, and I was like, believe me, I distinctly remember actually. I had this giant fucking Foot Locker that has like 120 movies in it
Yeah.
or something like that, and I pull out Kill Bill and Kill Bill 2, and Nate is like, whoa, 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 I'm not watching two movies tonight. He's like, I got something to do in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. You weren't watching two movies. I was like, no,
Yeah.
trust me, you're watching two
Yeah.
movies.
You're not gonna be able. Yeah, you were like, you're not gonna
Yeah.
not watch the second. Like, trust me. If you finish this first movie, I guarantee you'll want to watch. It's not like you'll need to. Like, you'll be like, oh my god, of course I'm watching this. Like, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, it's like gonna be
Yeah.
2 a.m. by the time we're done with the first movie. What
Yeah.
are you
It didn't
fucking
matter.
talking about? I was like, oh my god. I think the second disc was in the Xbox in under 5 seconds. Like, as soon as I couldn't, I was, oh my god, it's
Yeah,
in
this
the
is a
slot.
movie that Nate really latched on to.
I
So
really latched on this movie. I almost felt like attached to this movie. This movie like changed my. This is also one of I hadn't seen that many Tarantino movies before this movie. So the only Tarantino movies I'd seen before this movie was Pulp Fiction. Wait, Pulp Fiction. Was it anything else? This might have been.
I think I
Uh,
actually remember you saying you'd only seen Pulp Fiction. Now that I think back,
yeah, dude. This was the only one. So this like changed. Like I was like, oh my god, who is this Tarantino guy? Like I
yeah,
got like it blew
down
my
the
mind,
rabbit hole
blew
we
my
go.
socks off. I love the story. I just love the cinematography. I love the soundtrack. I love the aesthetics, the colors. I love the acting. I love the humor. I love some of the outrageousness, the ridiculousness, the narration, everything. Oh my god, it's just crazy. And it's like you said, it's probably his most out there movie. And that's probably why I like it so much, honestly. It's just like it's out there, which means it's risky in the sense that like it's going to be polarizing like
Oh,
and
absolutely. When you consider
yeah,
what came before it, which was what Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, to then pivot into Kill Bill with a
yeah,
samurai, like a homage to samurai movies,
right.
with this ridiculous theatrics throughout and ridiculous violence. It
Yeah.
was a huge step, a huge risk for him. Honestly, if you think about what he did before and where he was at in his career, that movie was probably a huge risk.
Yeah. And easily the best fight choreography in all of his movies. Obviously, it's not even close. I mean, because it has to be. They're gonna make a samurai movie. Like, you don't have a choice. It has to be the best fighting,
Yeah.
best sword play, like everything. Uh, I mean, yeah. Like, I'm just on like the far. It might be a polarizing movie, but I'm at the far positive end of that poll. I absolutely adored this movie. Just enjoyed it so much. I've seen it. It's probably one of the movies I've seen, even both volumes. I mean, I've seen just an ungodly number of times. One of the most watched movies for me ever. I can I know almost every line before it comes.
Didn't
I,
you
I can
learn some of the
even
fucking
I can even
Japanese?
recite like
Yeah.
I know how to pronounce some of the Japanese lines in the movie. Like when it not off the top of my head, but necessarily, but when it comes up, it's like oh yeah, and I can say it. Like it's just
Yeah,
what's
but
that line? What's that when
the Oren Ishii line.
oh yeah when Oren Ishii is and her fucking minions, her posse are just fucking around. They're fucking with Charlie Brown,
Yeah.
and yeah, Beatrix.
Beatrix has
She's
Sophie, right? And she calls out to
she
Oren
has so
Ishii.
just
If I remember
Oren Ishii.
right.
It's like Shobu something China, and it's like what does it translate to? It's like
I don't
oh,
remember.
you and I have
Yeah, yeah.
unfinished
I was about
business.
to say
Yeah,
something
and
about
it was
unfinished business.
yeah, and it's something like Shobu or something China, some sick Japanese. It sounds so beautiful in Japanese, especially if
Yeah,
you're actually Japanese
we'd
and
have
can
the
pronounce it
KKK in
correctly.
Japanese in a podcast, but here we are.
Yeah, yeah, the Japanese mafia underworld and the KKK. Yeah. Uh, oh, such good scenes, such good acting, such good absurdity, such good. I mean, just I love this movie
It's a
so
great
much.
combination of all of his
The
talents, really,
yeah, if I had
and
to knock
influences.
anything in this movie, and the only reason it's not number one is because I think, in terms of, it's just not the most impressive plot that he's ever done, and that's why it's not. It's
Just the way that
extremely.
Oren Ishii dies in like the first 5 minutes. I mean, I- we
Oh
we know
yeah,
Beatrix has to get to Bill. Like we get that. But we don't
right.
need crossing her or showing her name crossed out in the first 5 minutes of volume one or whatever it is.
That is true. Yeah, we do know a lot. Yeah, the order. If you want to talk about non-linearity in Tarantino's movies, this probably takes the cake for the weirdest order of events. I think.
Well, yeah, kind of
Maybe
sort of
Pulp
because
Fiction, except for Pulp Fiction, maybe.
well, you take if
I
you
guess that's
just watch volume one and you just like went to bed and save volume two for the next day or for whatever, you only get the first half of the movie is in, I guess, present day.
Yeah.
and the second half is in a flashback, I guess, basically, or a
Part
backstory.
flashback, part
Yeah,
yeah,
whatever you
yeah,
want to call it, and you don't really get. I mean, I see why Tarantino cut it into 2 movies. It was a tough sell to get people to come to a 4-hour movie in theaters. Um, and I get why he cut it where he did. And I don't even need it to be completely linear. I think he just could have kept things a little. There was a better way to go about what he
yeah.
did, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is the only I think this movie like marks so like maybe higher than all of his movies in almost every category except for the entire plot structure. And just like complexity of the plot, and maybe that's pretty much it. It is still awesome though. I mean, still
Hmm.
even the plot is still obviously super engaging and entertaining and great. Dude, how cool is it that how fucking amazing is it that he had a scene in that movie so violent that they
Oh
had to
yeah,
make
yeah,
it black and white. Like they couldn't even show it in color, otherwise it would have been rated what it's like NA. Like
yeah. Whatever.
so
NC-17. Yeah, they
NC-17.
whatever the
Oh, that's
ratings
so
committee,
funny.
whatever you call them, came back and was like, yeah, this isn't
Too
gonna
much blood.
fly, Quentin.
Yeah.
But
Too much.
which is funny because it also, I
It's
think, brings.
cartoony.
Yeah, it's cartoony, but it is incredibly bloody. I mean, we
It
have
is bloody.
people body parts all over the place. People
Yeah.
cut in half, flying into bloody pools of water. I mean, it's pretty insane. But
Dude, you know what's actually more disturbing for me, I think, is actually the anime scene where Oren Ishii's parents are killed. I think that is almost a more and she's under the bed and the blood soaks through the mattress and drips on her face. Even though
also
that's
some really
anime,
unsettling music in that scene.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, the music in that scene, dude. You have that what like the harmonica, like the
Yeah, it's like an accordion, a harmonica, or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah, it's like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, da, 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 da.
yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty good, right? Yeah. I mean, dude, that scene honestly is I think maybe more disturbing than all the for whatever reason.
I
It's
think,
because of the music. It's because of the music. I think you're right.
yeah, the music is pretty unsettling. I
The
think
music,
I didn't mention
the
this
music,
earlier. Actually, I think the most unsettling Tarantino scene is either like the Mandingo fighting in Django, or
the
when
Mandingo fighting is yeah,
D'Artagnan's getting ripped apart by the dogs. Like either one of those, I
yeah.
think is the most
It's
disturbing.
hard to
It's
pick. It's hard to
I
pick.
don't think there's even a close second to those two.
Yeah.
Like if you paired those together, I think there's like what it was in Moneyball, like 50 feet of crap, and then number two. Like,
You're right because even like we were saying in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like even the end, all the violence at the end, you have to take it in context and
it was hard to watch,
contextually,
but for different reasons.
right? And contextually, it was actually kind of funny, like you said. Whereas the Mandingo fighting and the dogs eating the Mandingo fighters, there's no way to slice that as funny. There's
Yeah, but
no that's
yeah, that's really
pure
why. That's why.
darkness. Like you cannot crack a smile. You can't even chuckle. There's nothing funny about it. It's all just dark, and it's like, oh
It's hard to
shit,
watch. It
oh
really is.
shit. Like yeah, this is like you get sick. It's hard to watch, and you. It's just it really peels at your emotions, and it's tough. Uh,
But I stand by,
not as
I'm
graphic,
talking about, yeah, I'm
but
talking about like just the act without any of the implications. Like the act of Brad Pitt smashing her into the mantle and the telephone
right,
repeatedly is like just the act more brutal to me than like
right,
two guys
exactly.
fighting to the death, like
The
bare hands.
physical act,
Yeah, yeah,
the physical and the physical act, and the actual scenery of like what you can actually visually see is more disturbing. But contextually, right, like the Mandingo stuff like has serious racial
yeah.
undertones and some fucking sinister shit and
And
that's
then the way they're cheering them on and all that, it's just
yeah,
it's a hard to watch scene. But we're rambling a little bit here, so.
yeah, we are.
My number two, Inglourious Basterds, in the rightful location, if I do say so myself. I think this movie. Uh, where do I start? I feel like I've said that like, where do I begin? Like with every movie on this list.
Yeah,
Um, but just Brad Pitt as Aldo Rain, absolutely fucking fantastic. Christoph Waltz as Hans Landa, fantastic. Everybody in this movie, fantastic. The plot and the pacing here, the comedic pacing as well. Like when they're talking about fuck, what does it go from? Like Aldo Rain's speech to like, we're gonna pillage and plunder through Nazi Germany, taking the scalps off every Nazi motherfucker we come across. Then goes right into the 999. Like, it's so funny. It is so funny. The man made Hitler funny, and he wasn't even a intentionally comedic role. It wasn't like a satire of Hitler, really.
Yeah.
And then
Not
when
like Jojo Rabbit.
and then when the guy comes, not like Taiki Watiti or whatever his name
Yeah.
is, or I probably butchered that, but in
Who knows?
Jojo
Yeah.
Rabbit, like not at all of the tone of Jojo Rabbit's version of Hitler. But then even the scene where Aldo Rain left the guy to live and carved the swastika in his forehead, and Hitler's like, "You're not telling a person, not a one." It's so funny. God, the Bear Jew, just the vivid characters he brings to life, and how I think he takes a Reservoir Dogs feel and combines it with like a Django Unchained kind of story with a Pulp Fiction plot line or like pacing, and brings like the Reservoir Dogs feel into it in many like respects, where like they're stuck in the basement, they can't leave the basement, kind of like. I think that movie really just combines all of what he has learned up to that point, and I'm rethinking not having this at 1 right now, honestly.
I actually was
But
interested to see if you would have this at 1. I didn't think you would, but I thought it was a possibility.
but the
This is
comedy in this is just fantastic. I don't know. I could go
yeah.
on and on, so I'm just gonna stop.
Yeah. Along with Reservoir Dogs, this is the Tarantino movie I've seen the least. And so, like you said, you're gonna watch Jackie Brown again. I'm gonna watch this one again and Reservoir Dogs again. Probably this one again. Actually, it's higher priority. I mean, look, I say this all the time, especially with music. Like, if you just immediately love a song or an album, usually it's almost a bad sign in the sense that it's not going to have a long lasting impact on you, and it's not going to have the endurance and sustainability for many years and still be just as interesting year after year as an album that like it takes you a long time to get into, or like it takes multiple listens. And I think Tarantino could easily be the same way, except for maybe like if you are already a Tarantino fan, like a big Tarantino fan, then it probably won't take you that long to get into one of his movies. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, love that right off the
Yeah.
bat. Like Django,
I
love that
think
right off the
Tarantino
bat.
is, if you're a fan of Tarantino, or even if you're not, even if you're just being introduced, or if you're inspired by this podcast, go check any of these movies out, whatever it may be. I think he's a guy that you will never experience, in my opinion. Again, I'm a huge Tarantino fan. Like hell, I have a tattoo here, Tarantino stuff. But
Yeah.
so I think he's a guy that you will never watch a movie the first time the way you watch a Tarantino movie. You'll never have like just the complete range of emotions and like what the fuck is going on to like I'm loving this movie, like whatnot. But then and you'll want to watch the movie for the first time again and again and again, and like relive the first time you watch Pulp Fiction or Inglourious Basterds or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's also a guy that multiple watches and a second watch is almost better. You notice more, you kind of know what's coming, but you're still like, give it like a month or two and then rewatch
Yeah.
whatever you
Right.
watch from Tarantino.
And like I said, and this movie was I saw this movie for the first time relatively early on in my Tarantino fandom. So that's again another reason why it definitely deserves a second watch for me. And I would almost, given what I know about it and what I remember from it, it's been a while. Like it could easily, I would almost be surprised if it didn't ladder up some spots for me if I saw it again. It definitely deserves a second watch for me.
Have you only seen it once?
I've seen it like 1.5 times. Like I
Wow.
seen
Yeah,
it
I've seen
once all the way
like
through,
6 or 7 times.
and then I saw like, I think I like turned it on super late at night and I like fell asleep, and not because it was I was tired.
Yeah.
And I had something else to say, but I forget. Whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a great movie. I think basically every scene in this movie is both comedic and dramatic gold at the same time. Like the whole scene where they try to go to the theater, opening the grand premiere, and Brad Pitt
Yeah.
has to stutter his way to stumble his way through Italian and Hans Landa just spews out
Buongiorno.
Italian. And it's just hilarious.
Yeah.
How like I would kill to come up with just like one scene of genius that Tarantino has just like off the cuff, and he's like, oh, I have like 50 of these ideas. I would kill for just like one of them basically.
Right.
But if you've done the math, you basically know that our number one. Oh, have you said your number two? Oh, you did. Kill Bill. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Yeah. So if you've done the math, you know that Pulp Fiction is, once again, this is honestly getting a little ridiculous. I think I said this last time, but if you know Nate and I, you know that we generally have the same general appreciation for overall genres and overall directors or something like that. But when it comes to rankings and what's number one and what's best, we could not differ more at times. So it is really funny that we have had the same number one
We
for
do,
every
yeah.
single episode that we've done so far. We probably look like
That is true.
biased ass motherfuckers here.
Yeah, because that is a good point. We actually will normally disagree heavily on number ones and number twos. And
Yeah, we will disagree heavily on where we put things, but we have an overall appreciation of everything. But what is appreciated more is often bickered back and forth almost nonstop.
Yeah.
So it's pretty insane that we've
except when it comes to Tarantino movies, metal guitarists, and albums since 2000.
Yeah, we're gonna need to throw a fucking wrench in something here next episode.
Yeah, next episode we got to pick a really hot topic.
Yeah, we got to throw a wrench in something here.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
But yeah, so Pulp Fiction, for me, there's not too many times. If I didn't go see a movie in the theater for the first time, I often do not remember the first time I watched it or like where I was or anything like that. This is a case where I will literally always remember the first time I watched Pulp Fiction. I watched it on my shitty ass iPod Touch in 8th grade.
What?
Yeah, because I was 13 years old. It was like on Comcast app or something like that. Because I was 13, I was allowed to watch like some R-rated movies, but definitely not every one. I was a huge movie fan. I knew Pulp Fiction was like number 4 at the time on the IMDb top 250. Saw it was free with my Comcast plan. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sneak this movie. So I watched it on my shitty iPod Touch, like strategically laying in my bed, so if my parents entered, I could like turn it off and they wouldn't know what was on the iPod. And you know, I totally remember watching it. I totally remember enjoying it, but I don't remember I didn't fall in love with Tarantino then. I was inspired to watch more. I had heard of Reservoir Dogs before, heard of Kill Bill before. Not so much Jackie Brown, and I forget what else was probably out at that time. I guess Inglourious Basterds was out at the time. Wasn't familiar with that, but that is certainly what started it all. The nonlinear storytelling, I feel like we've talked about the same things over and over again, but just the comedy in that movie, I would say that and Django Unchained are realistically violent. They're pretty fucking close. But making comedy out of that, and especially comedy out of what is essentially an anal rape scene, that is pretty impressive.
Making comedy out of an anal rapes. That's what he did.
That's
what he did. He did it.
I mean, who thinks of like Bruce Willis thinking of leaving Marcellus behind? He's like, oh, fuck it, I'll help the guy out. Starts with like a hammer. He's like, oh shit, you know what? I got a baseball bat. He's like, oh, chainsaw, you know what? That's it. And you just see his eyes go up, and it cuts to him like slashing the curtain off with the samurai.
Yeah.
I mean, who comes up with that, man? Who comes up with that?
Only
You have
Tarantino,
somebody
dude.
being anally raped in a basement, and you create comedy out of it, just based on where Bruce Willis looks and the camera angle. And
yeah, well, it not only is it comedic, but it's also dark. It's dark
it is
comedy.
Dark. It is certainly dark.
But it's not dark.
But I mean, you have two
comedy.
guys, like even leading up to that, when Bruce Willis is at the stoplight and Marcellus Wallace walks across and he's like, motherfucker. And then he just hits him with his car. And these two morons are stumbling around the streets of Los Angeles firing like 357 magnums at each other. Like, it's hilarious. It's absolutely, they're stumbling around like just absolute morons.
Yeah. Marcellus Wallace can barely walk in a zigzag
it's
line.
absolutely hilarious. It's just, And the way he pays homage to the old time, like in the cab ride with Esmeralda, how the back light is the shaky black and white Los Angeles, like clearly not a real street.
Yeah,
It's like the old 50s when you had seen in a car what the back window would look like.
yeah,
Um, just little stuff like that makes it really close to my heart because I really love those little kind of not overwhelming, but little kind of like nods to old cinema. Because I don't know about you, I've watched a lot of like
yeah.
50s, 60s, like black and white movies when I was in film back in high school and considering that as a potential career path. Um, but I think that it was where he takes all of his influences. I love all of what he like gives little tributes to. The plot's great, and again, he kind of takes his foot off the gas at the end, and has some like emotional payoff with Julius. Um, but and then yeah, also a guy's head being blown to absolute bits in the back of a car.
Hilarious.
Hilarious. Like
Hilarious. I mean,
and
you
I think
can't.
I remember. I think this is why I didn't become an instant Tarantino fan, because 13-year-old Connor was not at a moment like not at a time in his life where he realized that was fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
And I didn't know. I was like, who's this Tarantino guy? Like, what is this? Why is this the number 4 movie on IMDb? Like, I didn't know that I was
yeah,
supposed to be like laughing at these things. Like, I found some of them funny. I was like, oh, this is kind of like a funny scenario and stuff like that. But the individual acts and stuff,
yeah. I agree. I had a similar experience. I think this was also the first Tarantino movie I saw. I saw it relatively young. I don't think I was 13, but yeah, I also remember the first time I watched it. I mean, I also wasn't an instant Tarantino fan when I saw it because I didn't. All I knew was that it was considered one of the greatest movies ever made. I didn't know a ton about Tarantino himself. You know who it was made by. I didn't necessarily know he was a prolific director overall, not just this movie. But this movie, I've been able to muster up some criticism of every movie on this list so far. Can't do it for Pulp Fiction. Not a one. Not a one
yeah,
crit. Not a one. Not a
there's
one
nothing
critique.
wrong with the pacing. There's nothing wrong with like even the cheesy Tarantino dialogue shit, like I'll be down in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail or something like that. Like just goofy stuff that he has. It just is perfect for the character and
Love it. Yeah.
the way. It's actually ridiculous to look at Reservoir Dogs and to know that Pulp Fiction was the next thing this guy put out 2 years later.
That is
That
crazy.
is
That's
an
crazy to think
absolute
about.
insane leap of technical skill and improvement. Like,
Yeah.
and he's one of those guys. Like, this is kind of an interesting example, I guess, but I would say like Pearl Jam, like their album 10, 1991, like it would suck if I was a musical artist, if I put something out that I thought was like, this is genius, like this is a masterpiece album that I just made, like, and you have the ability to sit back and like really appreciate what you just did. To know that you didn't like come, like you're like, oh, I might never come close to making anything even as close to as good as that. I feel like it's a little unfair to say that about Pulp Fiction, even though it's in the number 1 spot, and even though it's his second movie, because I feel like all these movies are so close. It's
Yeah.
not like he hasn't lived up to Pulp
No.
Fiction. He absolutely
Yeah.
has.
Yeah. He has. Yeah.
Um,
Um. Yeah. Again, every element. We were talking about, yeah, just directors in general, and I think, in my opinion, whether or not you think that Tarantino is the best director ever or your favorite director ever, I think almost everyone could agree that he's the most unique director ever. I mean, there's never been a director, I feel like, where you're watching a Tarantino movie, like that director's movie
and the
when
thing
it's
is that
on.
there have
Like,
been so
it's
many
so
people that have
distinctive.
tried to like copy his style or to try to like draw influence from it, and they
Yeah.
still don't come close. Like some people that I think of when I think about like Tarantino, I think the closest I'd go is like the Coen brothers.
Yes.
But even then, they just don't like. I
Dude, he has a
love
magic touch.
some Coen brothers movies. Like No Country for Old Men is probably in my top 10 of movies. Fargo is great. I'm blanking on the rest on the top, off the top of my head, but um, there's just something that Tarantino has that they do not. Just plain and simple. Which is
Got the
not a
magic
knock on the
touch,
Coen
man.
brothers, but it's just a
Yeah.
praise of Tarantino.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say is, like, Tarantino, most unique director ever, most distinctive director ever. And so he obviously has all these attributes and elements of his movies that make them unique and make his directing unique and make just his movies so good. And again, Pulp Fiction, when you look at those attributes and you apply them to Pulp Fiction scores a 10 out of 10 on every one of those elements. I mean, it's just every single element that makes Tarantino. Pulp Fiction does them and does those attributes so well, as good if not better than every movie he's ever made. The cinematography, the soundtrack, one of the greatest soundtracks.
Dude, hold on. Could you imagine you take Pulp Fiction plot but do Once Upon a Time in Hollywood cinematography?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would obviously. Well, here's the thing. Like, Pulp Fiction had amazing cinematography. I do think that the cinematography of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was better, and I don't think I think it's probably unmatched.
I don't think it's much of a debate.
It's not a debate, but
I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Hateful Eight are probably his best cinematography movies.
I don't think it's a debate either, but I don't think the margin is enormous either. So,
also, you know what? I'm going to address this, not to cut you off, but it just dawned on me. Can we talk about how Quentin Tarantino has never won a Best Director Oscar? How? He should have. This man. We're talking about a guy who probably should have had a lifetime achievement award from the Academy Awards 10 years into his career. That infuriates me. It infuriates me. Like, I don't like. I just want my guy to get a little recognition. Is that so much? Is that so much to ask?
It's absurd. It's just obviously a travesty. I mean, it's obviously not right. I mean, it kind of, if you ask me, kind of discredits the entire Oscars. Like, I mean, like
yeah, listen up, you old fucks.
Look, you really honestly, that's such an egregious mistake.
He just
to
always
not have him winning,
he gets stuck.
It compromises all their rankings, all their awards.
Pulp Fiction had the horrible, unfortunate circumstance of being released in the same year as like Forrest Gump and The Shawshank Redemption, which is just the Academy is going to eat that bullshit up. They're good movies. I will grant you that they're great movies, but I mean, maybe emotional, much better emotional movies than Pulp Fiction. But if I'm talking like desert island movies, I'm taking Pulp Fiction and not even considering those other two.
1,000 out of 1,000 times, I'm taking Pulp Fiction. Yeah.
So I don't know what it is. I guess he's got a polarizing style. Like, you just got to face it. Like, it's a style that we love and that we've sat here and gushed about for the past hour and a half. But I mean, some people it just doesn't appeal to, and so he's not going to get those votes. He's not going to get a Best Director nod for movies that they don't appreciate. So
it's sad.
It really is. I want him to, and that's probably part of the reason why I'm a little disappointed that he might choose Star Trek for his last movie, is that he's not going to win. Like, maybe he'll win like visual effects or something like that. I just want him to get a little credit.
That's a good point.
He's been up so many times for Best Director, and
he won't get it if he does Star Trek.
Always falls short. And I'm sure it doesn't matter to him. I'm sure Quentin Tarantino does not give a fuck about Best Director. He's going to make whatever movie he wants, which I respect the hell out of that. But I'm not.
Yeah,
I want him to get one. I do.
Yeah, you're allowed to be selfish. Yeah.
Yeah, I want him to get one. And you know what? Here's the sad thing. I really think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was his best chance. It had to be his least polarizing movie. It wasn't as violent. The plot wasn't insanely out there or difficult to follow. It had Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt in it. I mean, what more can you ask for in terms of like star power, plot, like the whole cinematography? You gave Hollywood a movie about Hollywood and paying homage to it. I mean, I think that was his best shot. And
he got beat by Parasite, right?
Yeah, again, he just picked a bad year to release Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yep.
Which, have you watched that again? Have you rewatched Parasite?
No, only seen it once.
Oh, you definitely should give that a shot.
Definitely need to rewatch it.
I'll give that movie the bump if you haven't seen it. Obviously, check out Parasite. I think Tarantino called that one of his favorite movies of, if not his favorite movie of 2019. Wow, we're in 2020. Hard to remember that sometimes.
Yeah, the dreadful year.
Yeah, because no movies have come out. We haven't seen shit. If Tenet gets delayed again, I'm never leaving my house for another movie. I'm banning the theater. I'm just gonna be a home person.
It dawned on me that Christopher Nolan hasn't actually directed that many movies. I thought he directed a lot more.
No, he's kind of like Tarantino, where in my opinion, they've released about
Yeah.
the same amount of movies, and there's not been a bad one. Still
I
waiting on
thought he
another
had
one.
released a lot of movies, like for whatever reason.
No, he's pretty picky choosy about his movies. He also writes his own movies. This is why I tweeted that time. I was like, I will always pay to go see Quentin Tarantino and Christopher Nolan movies in the theater because
Yeah.
they're original. I find them entertaining. They're unique.
Multiple times.
Yeah, and yeah, multiple times. True. I think I saw Interstellar twice. Ooh, I don't know if I saw Django Unchained twice or not. That was my first Tarantino movie in theaters. Was Django Unchained. I went
Yep.
on Christmas Day actually to see Les Mis with my mom. Django Unchained also came out on the same day. Not gonna lie, I was a little depressed at everybody in the Django Unchained line. Kind of wanted to hop over, but yeah. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
always pay to go see Tarantino and Christopher Nolan, and for the most part, Martin Scorsese. He picks some interesting movies to direct at times in old age, but and also he's
Yeah.
releasing them on Netflix now. What the fuck is that, Marty? But yeah, those guys, those three especially, are guys I will always try to support because I don't want movie theaters to die. That's kind of something sad for me is like this could potentially kill movie theaters, COVID.
Dude, I miss it so much. And yeah, I mean it's so bad for them right now. So I mean, I don't know how they're gonna fucking stay open. I don't know how they're gonna
Yeah.
they just can't make money right now. It's like
What they need to do is they just need to
they
all
have a lot
decide
of
to
overhead.
they need to all decide to just overload the theater with every delayed release basically in like the first 2 weekends that theaters are back.
Yeah.
You just need to release everything that got
Yeah.
delayed instead of trying to pick a date the next year or something like that. But they're obviously not going to do that. But
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
dude.
so
I
what do you?
miss
What's your ideal next Tarantino movie? Like you don't got to give me a plot or anything, obviously, but like what are we looking for here?
I think I would rather see a third volume of Kill Bill than Star Trek.
Yep,
And
I agree.
outside of that, I feel like the options are either Star Trek, Kill Bill Volume 3, or something miscellaneous, right?
Yeah, I guess. Or
So
I think he's floated a Django sequel a few times, like the idea, but I think
I
I
would
think I'd
not.
prefer to see Kill Bill and
Django
Kill
would
Bill
be my least
sequel.
preferred for some reason. I don't know why. I just feel like
Here's
I don't
all
know
right.
why.
Here's a totally out there idea that I'm not even sure if I would go for. He brings his career full circle. Actually, I don't know if you know what I'm about to say, but he brings his career full circle with Michael Madsen and John Travolta in a Vega Brothers movie.
Vincent Vega and who?
And damn, I forget who's Michael Madsen's character's name in Reservoir Dogs. They're brothers.
Which guy is Michael Madsen?
Mr. Blonde, the psychopath that cuts off the ear.
Uh
They're
oh
brothers
yeah, yeah.
in the Tarantino.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah. I want I don't know how he could do it, but they have this like de-aging shit now CGI. I would if I'm going with a totally out there idea, but that still is like in Tarantino canon or whatever you want to call it. Give me a Vega Brothers movie.
Yeah, that would be cool. I think Kill Bill Volume 3 would be my pick.
I feel like that was clear based on
Yeah, my rankings. I mean,
yeah.
it would I mean, and basically the idea being that Nikki, um, the daughter of
That idea's been floated. That
uh,
Vernita Green.
Vernita Green, code name Copperhead.
Yeah, I think it was Copperhead. I wanted to say Copperhead, but that could be totally wrong also.
That could
So
be that could be totally wrong.
yeah, but she should be motherfucking Black Mamba.
She should be motherfucking Black Mama. uh, yeah, she comes back. I mean, because yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of you feel like Tarantino did that on purpose. You know, that they wrote that in where she would witness the murder of her mom, and
Apparently, yeah. I don't know.
and and,
It's been a
and
while
Beatrix
since I
literally says, if you ever
if you ever
feel
feel
raw
sore,
about it,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I'll be
I
waiting.
don't
Like yeah,
know how true this is. It's been like years since I read this, but I saw somewhere that Tarantino has written like an opening scene to Kill Bill Volume 3
yeah.
where Nikki is with L Driver and L Driver now has like sunglasses on or like 2 eye patches or whatever. Like she survived
Oh
and made it out of the trailer. And now L is like kind of recruiting Nikki, I guess, to go after Beatrix.
See,
Um,
that would be you know, that'd be cool. It's always the idea of a volume 3 has always perplexed me because it feels weird. Like it feels like it would be
I don't
weird
think there's
because
a bad enough guy. There's not.
you can't paint Nikki as a bad guy, really.
No,
Like you
and
can't
no one.
really do that.
And
So
Elle
because
was
she's just
already like
avenging her mom.
defeated, and
She
now
was like a
she's
sweet
fucking.
little girl.
Yeah, and now if you want to paint Elle as the bad guy, she's blind and she was already defeated. Like, is this really a competition?
It's kind of a lame, right? So
Yeah,
you
I don't think it's
in
gonna
if
happen.
you made, you could almost say like Nikki could almost. I've always like, what
Would you
if
call the movie Kill
Nikki,
Beatrix? Like,
right? Like kill Beatrice, right? Like is in this context, Nikki is almost the hero,
she's
the
almost
good
like
guy,
Beatrix of the first two movies.
and how can, but you can't possibly turn Beatrix into the main
Yeah,
villain.
no,
Like
I don't
what?
know.
You can't do that. I
It'd be
mean,
a really strange relationship within the movies, but I think
yeah.
my overall
So
vote is just a totally standalone
yeah.
movie. I don't.
Yeah, I don't want him to do a Kill Bill Volume 3 if he's gonna ruin it. Which, but the reason why I say Kill Bill Volume 3 is because I'm confident that if he did decide
Yeah,
to do Kill Bill Volume 3,
he's not gonna fuck with it
he's
if he
not
was
gonna
gonna
ruin it.
ruin it. Yeah,
Yeah, he knows what the fuck he's doing. So that's why I
yeah,
have the confidence that like if he went that route, it would be amazing. And so I'm confident in saying it would be my preference. But obviously, I don't know how the fuck he would do it.
yep,
So it's probably unlikely. It's probably just, yeah. If he has if he has a shot at, especially if he has a shot at best director, it's probably going to be a standalone movie.
yep. Well, all right. Here's to Tarantino not retiring after 10.
Yes.